Almost universally, the number one thing people mess up is spending enough time understanding their buyers.
So my first question is easy. If you were able to make every new marketer read one book, what would it be and why?
So, disclaimer, I don't read a lot of books. And
Okay.
I don't think I've ever read a marketing book in my entire life. Um, so I would have them read Radical Candor, um, because I think that a lot of what holds marketers back is the same thing that holds anyone back, which is like dealing with other people across departments on a team and in a team environment. And so oftentimes what separates a marketer from being an A player versus a B or C player isn't their marketing skills. It's their ability to lead and communicate effectively with their peers.
What do you feel are the top differences between marketing a physical product versus marketing a SaaS product?
Obviously, when you are selling a physical product, the ASP, the price is going to be a lot lower than a SaaS product. There are exceptions, of course, if you have like a product-led motion or free trial, or you can adopt it, the SaaS product as a solo seat, then the ticket price may be down in the realm of something like a tangible good that you could buy. But typically the big difference is that the ASP, and then that opens up, it introduces a lot of new complications because you might have multiple buyers. But at the same time, it also opens up a lot more budget that you can spend to market it, right? So it opens up a different realm of tactics and strategies that make sense because of the budget that you have at your disposal, as well as the challenges that you'll have to overcome due to buying committees and that sort of a thing. I'm sure there are a lot of other things I can rattle off, but I'd say that's probably the biggest.
So in your experience when creating a SaaS strategy, what are the top considerations you take to ensure growth?
Almost universally, the number one thing people mess up is spending enough time understanding their buyers and then personalizing the way in which they communicate with their buyers. So, whether it's a seed stage startup or a Series C startup that's already over $1 billion valuation, almost always there's more work to be done in truly understanding their buyer persona or buying committee on a deeper level, and then shifting from talking about features to really speaking the language of that person, meaning like what gets that person hired and fired, what gets that person promoted, and understanding what's on their roadmap of priorities, what keeps them up at night. And so I think the number one thing is like identifying ways in which we can take where they are today in their messaging. And usually what you'll see as a pattern is it's typically very product and feature heavy, because a lot of the time these companies are founded by product people. And so the founders are like drilling into their team, like, no, we need to talk about the whiz bang feature X or Y, when in reality, that founder needs to be told to sit down and stay in their lane, which is product, and have a marketer say, okay, that's fine and dandy. I love that we have a great product. That's going to make my life easy as a marketer. However, we need to really understand our buyers and speak their language and tap into their fear and pleasure centers, right? Because that's what's going to make them make a decision.
And what are the greatest challenges for SaaS marketers in terms of lead generation?
Velocity is a challenge. Like a lot of teams just have a hard time moving quickly, whether it's because of getting approvals from other lines of business or departments, or creative can slow things down. I mean, there are a number of things that slow down the cadence of getting campaigns into the wild and testing, and the cadence of testing and experimentation and just shipping things out into the wild is your cadence of learning, which means that's your cadence of improvement, which ultimately leads to the results that you're looking for. So I think really a lot of it comes back down to how quickly can you move as a team through testing and implementation.
Gotcha. And what is the solution to that velocity? Like, is it automation? Is it?
I mean, these are things you can't automate. Obviously, you can use technology to help with like just being set up for success, but that's kind of like the plumbing of things. It's more so encouraging your team to be hypothesis driven, and then setting expectations at the leadership level, or sorry, setting expectations with your team as the leader of like, here is, instead of making a couple of big bets and then working hard on those bets, it's easy for those to become like multi-month projects. So instead, it's like sitting down with your team and saying, hey, what are all of our hypotheses about our buyer persona? And this could be broken up by channel. It could be broken up by industry. It could be broken up by a lot of different things, but like essentially there'll be different categories where you can come up with a set of hypotheses about what's going to work and what isn't going to work. And so you take that set of hypotheses about what's going to work, say, great, like what are 5 tests for each of these that we could run that aren't heavyweight? They're just like 5 tests we could get into the wild in the next 3 days if we really just put our heads down and did it. And then building a culture of that as the mentality is like, great, it's a new week. Last week, that campaign bombed. It sucked. It wasn't good. What did we learn? Oh, we learned that like this one thing probably doesn't resonate with this audience. Awesome. This week we should test the next hypothesis. Oh, that kind of like did better. How can we mix and match the learnings of these 2 things and like triangulate around to a better ultimate end state, better knowledge of our buyers? So I think it's the teams that are able to move very quickly through those cycles and not get hung up, or not let things become bigger deals than they need to be. Of course, there are going to be initiatives that are larger initiatives. Like you're not going to spit out an event in 1 week. You're going to spend time on that, but it's not letting these big bets become the main thing or the only thing, and constantly having space and cadence built into the teams for that level of learning and testing.
Do you have any team activation tips for brainstorming new content and growth strategies?
I think functionally it helps to be able to break these up by category. Because if you're just like, sitting back in a white room or with whiteboards and you're like, oh, what kind of hypotheses do we have or tests? That's too unstructured. Like that won't lead to good ideas. Or it might, but it'd be random. So I think instead breaking things up into functional buckets where there could be a set of hypotheses created. So it's like, I'll use an example from a company that I worked with a long time ago, where they were trying to get conversions for people to show up in person to see this product in person. And so they were running ads to try to get that conversion event. And they were spending $37 per lead. We eventually got them down to $1.34 per lead. And then it normalized around like $9, something like that. And so the way that we essentially took like the category of, we want to drive people to this event as a bucket, and then broke that down into a set of like, okay, I have a set of hypotheses around the images that we're using on these ads. I think that, some people are going to resonate with this type of image. Some people might resonate with this type. Like there are 5 images that are different underlying sentiments of behavior that I would like to test. And I believe that'll drive material conversions. That was one of them. The other was like, I believe the underlying sentiment of, it was actually a electric motorcycle company. So it's like the sentiment of speed versus the sentiment of economy versus sentiment of saving the environment versus the sentiment of freedom from gasoline. I don't know. We had like a bunch of underlying sentiments. And so like writing copy that mapped back to each of those underlying sentiment. So you just kind of like walk all the way around all the different assets and variables that could create or affect a campaign to solve the problem of how do we get people to sign up to show up for this thing. And then bam, now there's like 30 different things we could test and benchmark off of each other. And so getting from $37 down to $1.34 was essentially over the span of maybe 4 weeks running a ton of these micro tests. Maybe it was more than that. It was 6 weeks running 30 different tests, taking the winning variable from each of them until we had just created this Frankenstein ad that just performed incredibly well because it took all of the winning pieces. So that's kind of what I mean about, how to brainstorm. Once you have that bucket of our goal is, I got off on a tangent there. Once you have that bucket of like, our goal is to drive people to this event or whatever your goal is, then I think you go into a room and you do the whiteboard exercise, and just say like, no idea is stupid. let's go. What weird shit could we test, and just make it a really safe space for people to throw a bunch of horrible ideas out there, and a bunch of good ideas will end up trickling down. I think it's important to get people, like, you have to get in that flow state of creativity, and that requires feeling safe enough to get there. And so usually as the leader, I will throw out some stupid ideas just to like seed the room and show like, hey, it's cool to throw out weird ideas. I'm going to start, right?
And do you have like a standard testing window when you're like testing these new ideas? Is it like 3-day testing window is a standard, or you just kind of vary it per campaign?
It varies. It depends on budget. It depends on channel. I probably think like 2 weeks in channel with some decent budget behind it is enough time to see. A lot of the time, especially product founders will get caught up on like, well, that's not statistically significant, right? Like it's not stat sig. And my response is like, we're not looking for stat sig. We're looking for, or it's not that we're not looking for stat sig, but many times that won't be a realistic, plausible outcome based on either budget or the amount of time we have. So really, we're just looking for signal, like some inkling in one direction or the other of, is it A or is it B? Great, let's move on. It was kind of mostly A. Great.
In your opinion, what are experienced marketers looking for with respect to building a powerful marketing team?
100% without question, skills are table stakes, and therefore hire for personality. Okay. We've hired 35 marketers in the last 12 months, probably more than that, because some of them we didn't keep on the team. And there have been a lot of great hires and a lot of mistake hires. And the pattern has always been, almost universally, most people have the skills, but the real hard thing to screen for, and the hard thing to, the thing that you can't teach is the personality around like, are they in, there's a podcast actually, let me try to find this and send you the link in chat. So we'd been trying to figure out how to define this. It's kind of like very hard to define because it's a soft thing, like a soft skill. I just put it in the chat. And my VP of demand gen, Karina, found this podcast episode and thought it was like, this is exactly what we've been trying to describe. And it truly is. They call it impact players. But it's Brene Brown and Liz Wiseman talking about what it means to be an impact player. And it's essentially, you're looking for people who are incredibly proactive. They're driven from a fire within. They don't give a shit about their title. They don't care about, they're not playing this like ladder climbing game. They just want to win. They want to do great work. They want to be a team player. They want to like, they're very service oriented. Like, how can I help you? How can I help you? I know it's not my job responsibility, but like, I've got extra time. How can I help? That is so much more important than trying to compare like, who knows AdWords better? Who knows, demand-based better? Because you could pull someone aside and say, hey, I feel like you're at a C right now with your demand-based knowledge. I'm going to give you the next week to just focus purely on taking some demand-based courses and like level up your skill, because that's going to get you to the next level. And I want that for you. And boom, you've solved the problem of like a skill gap. But the other thing is just like an innate thing that is really hard to take someone that doesn't have that thing and get them there. It requires a ton of patience, a ton of investment, and you're probably fighting a losing battle if they're already at like this stage in their career.
Gotcha.
I think maybe that's like cynical of me. I should not be so like, you can't change people, but it's a pretty.
No, I agree. It's hard. Yeah. Like you can always, everybody can always learn, but it's hard to learn like a personality, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think as a leader, you have to pick and choose where you're willing to fight the hard fights. I'd rather fight the hard fights on like teaching someone a new skill or helping them be a better manager, rather than being like, I am going to rewrite your fundamental person operating system.